Hello everyone, welcome to the second video. First I'd like to say that if you didn't see my first video on the fractal universe, I really recommend that you watch it because I'll be building on many of the concepts that I've developed there. And this video will explore source creation, that is how source actually creates, and it will get us into the debate about science and religion and see how we can bridge the gap between evolutionary theories and creationism and even other esoteric theories about how we came into existence as a species, what we're doing here, how humans got created, and so forth. So, we have to start somewhere. So let me just start with a very theoretical framework about God and source. We can go look at what it says in the Bible, and it's not that especially is interesting to start with John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Now, I'm not going to go into a lengthy interpretation of what that means, but to me this refers to the Om sound, which is in Buddhism it's the initial sound of creation, and in Hinduism the initial sound of creation. Others would call it, in science probably you'd call it the vibration left over after the Big Bang. I would just say that it's vibration. I think vibration is the most essential building block of the universe. You could say it's the initial what there was after the void. Tesla famously said that everything is vibration and energy, but you could say that vibration, energy, and information are actually exactly the same thing. If you take a wave, any wave, it has some information in it. It has some energy. That is, for instance, microwave can heat up water. All kinds of different waves have different energies, and it's a vibration. So you have 3 in 1, and that is basically how, from the void you have a vibration, and that is the Om sound. That is the initial the start of the universe. So here's how you can explain it in a more esoteric terms. Let's just say that source God is everything, but it is 2 parts. The first part is it's absolute nothingness. It's the void, which I'll here illustrate with just this big black ball. It's nothing. And at the same time, it's everything. And since there is no time, since time doesn't exist, you could imagine that the true state of source is an infinitely fast flickering between void, nothingness, pure nothingness, and everything that ever existed and will exist. Why? Because in an infinite void, you can have instantly appearing all of the possible vibrations, all of the possible information that ever existed and will exist. So you could have, like in here, you could have Beethoven's Ninth Symphony that appears out of the void. You could have you drinking your coffee as information, as a wave, as energy, which then you can give a form to in the form of atoms, and then, this is annoying. Atoms, and then cells, and then all of the other sort of layers of the universe. But essentially, all the information is already there. It's just that it's appearing and disappearing constantly, infinitely fast. And then something happens. God created the heaven and the earth. I won't even go into all of the details, but what you can see when you read Genesis is that it's simply a process of gradual separation between everything and nothing. Basically, the path that it takes for nothing to go back to everything and back becomes longer. Here, it flickers infinitely fast. Here, you have a separation. You could say that this is heaven or whatever. This is the earth. And then back to God, back to source, back to whatever. And then it's all the time. A lengthening of the path that it takes to go from nothing to everything. And you could say that this is the past. You could say that this is the future. So you could say that source is actually the ultimate future. Well, where all future timelines, regardless of what they are, lead back to. Of course, this doesn't really make sense because past and future unravel themselves simultaneously. You see, this expands, so source expands and creates in all directions at the same time. And that's why in the story of creation, when you read Genesis, you could say that it looks like God or source created everything almost instantly. It's 7 days or whatever, but actually you could say that, here he created man, here he created the animals. I know I'm such a good drawer. Here he created the plants. Here he created the water. And then what happens though is, and this is where the interesting part starts. Don't forget that if God created everything instantly out of the void, or nearly instantly, then all of these creations had zero karma, zero incarnations. Interesting. You only had Adam and Eve. No other humans existed. So what were Adam and Eve's past lives? Huh? Now, what's interesting is that you also have other theories, of course, about the emergence of humanity, like aliens and the seeding of planet Earth. But now we're going to get into how source creates, and it will all become clear. So again, I'll have to do it because it's going to get a little hectic. Nothing and everything, which manifests itself instantly. Then there's a sort of a break, and everything and nothing just take a little bit longer to go from one back to the other. And all of this expands outward simultaneously. If you look at it from this way, it's past going towards the future in a logical fashion. But here's the interesting part. God created man in his image. How does this work? You could say that time actually moves only this way. There's only the internal present, and time is rather logic, what I would call logic, or infinity experiencing itself. What happens is, once the first humans are created, they have thoughts, theories about how they came to be there once they sort of lose consciousness of the source, once they don't know where they came from. And so they say, oh, what if, people from outer space created us? And that creates a new timeline where those humans were indeed created by little aliens here in the little spaceships. And they seeded planet Earth, and then humanity exists from that point. And then, another human comes along at a certain point in time, Darwin, and says, oh, what if it's evolution? Isn't that how we were created? And so from his present, he has a thought. Oops. And since man is created in God's image, we have the same creation power as the creator, because we're part of the creator. And that is exactly how the creator basically expands and experiences all that the creator is. It's through incarnating itself in matter, in the physical matter, and then from that point of view, trying to sort of figure out what he's doing there after having amnesia, you could say. And thanks to that, he can experience everything which is in here, which is basically like an immense puzzle, unassembled puzzle, which has no sense whatsoever. Like there's everything in here at the same time, but it's like if you have all the pieces of a puzzle inside a box in no order, no specific order, it doesn't make any sense. You can't really contemplate it. Whereas this is a kind of a sorting mechanism or a strategy that Source came up with to solve the puzzle of what it is, to see itself in a logical fashion across all possible timelines, going from nothing to everything. And so if you take this perspective here, that is, the genesis theory. If you take this perspective here, it's the seeding of the planet. If you take this perspective here, it is evolution and science. But what's really happening is we're in an eternal present, and we're constantly creating the past which leads us to our present moment. Constantly. And see if we can create a story. Here you have the monkey. I don't even know how to draw a monkey. Never mind. The ape. See if we can come up with a story which manages to merge with our present timeline, created somewhere from nothing, and there are an infinite amount of theories that you can come up with because all of us are thinking all the time about how this universe came to be. And you could say that every thought creates a timeline, but then it gets sort of lost in infinity and doesn't manage to merge with our present, because simply there's no way to logically build that timeline retrospectively from the present tense. So what is the truth? You can see that from this model, all of it is the truth. Absolutely all of it. From creationism to, the seeding of planet Earth by aliens to evolution. It's just that it's almost like, imagine if this were a movie. And of course, an infinite movie. Where do you start? Where's the beginning of the infinite movie? Well, you could say you could start with the middle. It's not really the middle, but let's say it's the middle. It's like if you have black here, white here, you start with a shade of gray. And then you keep adding new shades, more and more shades. And you can add an infinite amount of shades, of shades of gray between nothing and or darkness and everything, which is a white light. White light contains all of the others lights, all the other frequencies. So you have an infinite movie. Where do you start? You start in the middle. So you create, you create the earth. You create separation first, and you create man, whatever. And then it's almost like try to tell a logical story out of the 5 frames in a movie. You take 5 frames from Lord of the Rings, for instance, and try to tell a convincing story with those 5 frames. Well, it's impossible. You'd have to say God created, whatever, Gandalf, and God created the hobbits and whatever. And then you add new frames. You add, let's say now you have 200 frames. And when you have 200 frames from that movie, then you can start creating or telling another story, maybe with the seeding of aliens. And then add, add 2 billion... just like almost in the trillions and trillions of frames. Then you can tell the story from this perspective of evolution. Now, what's really interesting here is this is what a soul basically is. You could say we're all source, we're coming from the source, this is like one soul, and then it sort of splinters like lightning across all of these timelines. And every time it's on a timeline, it's basically living one incarnation. And that's where you get the quantum theory, quantum hypnosis, sessions and Dolores Cannon's books, where from the point of view of a human being in the present here, from the point of view of somebody that's going through hypnosis in the present here, they can connect to either what I would say are future lives as aliens somewhere here, or past lives either on the science timeline, you could say here as a hunter-gatherer digging potatoes, or as a alien that seeded the earth, or as a spirit that is creating sort of just pure energy that's creating planets and things like this, playing around with colors, but it's all the expression of this one soul, which splinters into infinite. Actually, you could say that this is the one soul, the source, and then it splinters into an infinite amount of across all the different layers or timelines. And all of them are happening at the same time. And this is what's really interesting, is that this process of creation via thought happens everywhere at the same time. So just to give you an idea, for instance, imagine if from your present here, you start a campfire with your buddies. You are actually sending, via that action of starting a campfire, you're sending information into the past to the ape so that he finds the courage to go and take a branch that's lying on the ground that caught fire and try to see if he can master that act of manipulating fire. And the fact that that ape in the past manipulated that branch enables you in the future to light up your fire camp. And so that's why I'm saying that this is like an infinite puzzle which solves itself everywhere simultaneously at the same time. So the way that it looks is almost like this sharpening effect of a camera. It's not that it goes from past to future. It's that everything comes into focus simultaneously at the same time, and source expands logically all the time in all directions. And so it gets to experience more and more of all that's all that is within source. That is the overall objective, into infinity. And of course, if you watched the first video on fractals, you could also say that there are key moments here, key logical layers in here that allow for experimentation. You could say that the emergence of the first star allowed for more experimentation than a chaos of primordial soup of atoms. You can say that the emergence of the first living cell allowed for much more interesting interactions than just chemical reactions and planets crashing into each other. You could say that the emergence of, well, the layer of human beings allows for much more interesting stories than what would be possible with animals and plants. And we are about to reach a sort of a new level, which is, well, actually we're about to transform from being mutant chimps into humans. We're not human yet. Being human would mean that we have truly transcended biology and become something that is higher than biology, because a living cell is made of chemicals, but you cannot say that a cell is just random chemical reactions. It's much more than that. You could say, that's where the laws of chemistry are sort of ill-adapted to explain what's happening with the cell, and that's where you come up with the laws of biology. And of course, the laws of biology are also ill-suited to really explain the full complexity of what a human is. But not quite, which is why we haven't become human yet, because that would mean that the laws of biology would almost be irrelevant, just like the laws of chemistry are irrelevant when it comes to explaining what a living cell is, and just like the laws of physics, I guess, don't really match up to what happens in a star. And it's much more convenient, of course, to explain, the interactions between atoms, like, forming molecules, H2O, using chemistry than using physics. And so it's this process that we're engaged in right now. And understand that basically when from your present moment, whatever that may be, your eternal present, the past from your point of view comes fully into focus, and you've understood everything below, all of it. You're not like stuck on this one timeline. You think that like this timeline of the Big Bang and evolution, that's the truth, the only truth. No, once you understand that all of it is true, absolutely all of it, and you understand the process of creation, it means, because you're in an eternal present between the past and the future, that the future has also come fully into focus as a sort of a mirror image, which means that from our present moment, all of the future timelines are also clear, or predictable, which means that we have to break out, we have to go someplace unexplored, something that is still hazy. What's here, I don't know, like humanity exploring, the galaxy and creating colonies or whatever. Otherwise, you're kind of on a predictable path here. This has already been explored. When you have explored all of your past from your present moment, it is the same as if you've explored all of your future from the present moment as well. It's a mirror. And so that's the process of ascension, basically, and going from 3D to 5D. But even though I hate these acronyms, maybe I'll quickly touch on this, even though I should explore this in a more detail in a future video. But 3D, when I had I had a very weird moment last year where I expanded my consciousness, and I had a vision that a living cell, when it multiplied, when it became, when from one cell were created two cells, it's not what it appeared. It's actually what happens is, imagine if there's like a frozen in time universe, 2D universe, frozen 2D universe of all of the laws of chemistry and physics, which are predictable because they've gone full circle. And upon the emergence of the living cell, it actually wraps reality around it and this 2D reality around it. It wraps it around it, and then it navigates inside this 2D reality in a 3D manner. I don't know if that's clear, but just imagine that you have an infinite amount of 2D snapshots of a frozen reality, which is predictable, fully predictable, and has gone full circle, the laws of chemistry and physics. And then the living cell basically can wrap infinite 2D planes around itself and create a 3D world. And I think that's kind of a similar process that we're going to go through when we go 5D. It's just that we will be able to wrap ourselves in the three-dimensional world, which will become a frozen in time because all of it is predictable. Again, all of it has come full circle, and we can then wrap it around ourselves and manipulate it. Just like a living cell can manipulate chemistry and can manipulate sort of all of the layers below it without violating the laws of chemistry and physics, but still, doing things that are way, way above what you can do with just, basic chemistry. I hope that's clear. It was a long video, a lot to process. If you have any questions or remarks, please let me know. And please share, and don't forget to watch the first video if you haven't watched it, because it really is an important sort of prelude to this.